My lord, the Houston Texans defense is at the gate. The Houston Texans defense is at the gate. I'm Paul Gallant, and this is the Gallant Says podcast for Wednesday, January 7th, 2026. Hit it.
A radio show host in Seattle called Paul Gallant.
Paul Gallant's wondering the same things a lot of people wonder.
You are definitely living in the hindsight world today, Paul.
I was just kind of curious what Paul gets to see.
Fucking grow up, mother. Are you kidding me?
Paul Gallant, what the hell is wrong with you?
Oi!
Oi! Oi! Oi! Oi!
Ziggy-zag, ziggy-zag, Welcome to a live edition of the Gallant Says podcast live on YouTube. Like and subscribe at Paul Gallant, on Twitch at Gallant Says. Give me a follow, but I'd really appreciate a sub. On X at Gallant Says Pod. On Instagram at Sports Gallant. On Facebook at Paul Gallant Sports, and on the TikTok at Gallant Says. Give me a follow, give me a subscription on all of those things. If you could, you can get it after the fact, Apple Podcasts and on Spotify. We all know how great this Houston Texans defense is. I think it's the best defense the Texans have ever had. I'm curious as to how they will fare in the playoffs. If they do well, the Texans could potentially make it to their first AFC Championship game ever and perhaps go further. We all know how great this thing is. But you just know what you're seeing on TV or when you're going to games at NRG Stadium. It's rare that you see deep dives into a team on par with the one that you're about to get from my guy Tyler Dunn of the Go Long Substack. Tyler wrote a John Facenda level, he was the voice of God on NFL Films caliber odyssey about what makes the Houston Texans defense the Houston Texans defense. What makes them swarm? It's fucking awesome. It is Houston Texans porn, a deep steel blue pill, if you will.
It's football time in Houston, and we're ready to play.
Tyler is going to be on Friday's show. He's going to talk about those two articles about the Houston Texans defense with me, plus what he wrote about CJ Stroud last month and about the questions for him leading up to these playoffs. In the meantime, though, I want to give you my favorite parts from this epic article by Tyler. This is how the article begins. The Texans defense was born in fire. And then it tells a very interesting story about Azeez Al-Shaair, his upbringing, and why he's wired the way that he's wired. It's incredible, the Azeez Al-Shaair part. It's going to make you feel, to be frank, like a pussy. It's going to make you feel soft. This guy has overcome a lot. There's one point where he is described by Tyler as the antagonist cast as Voldemort, Hannibal Lecter, and Darth Vader. More from Tyler Dunn in this awesome write-up about the Houston Texans and specifically their defense. This team should not exist in 2025. Not in a league that siphons violence out of its sport under the harebrained guise of player safety. Certainly not in a society full of sensitive scrollers offended by their own shadow. Damn, Tyler, this is some awesome writing. A line from Azeez Al-Shaair. There are 7,000 spoken languages around the world. Everyone understands the same two emotions: love and violence. A hug is a hug, says Al-Shair. A punch is a punch. Violence, you don't have to know anything I'm saying. When I hit you, you know what that means. Damn! More Houston Texans porn and Tyler Dunn's write-up about this Texans defense.
It's football time in Houston, and we're ready to play.
This defense's greatest strength isn't explained in numbers. Rather, the twitching eyeballs of offensive players a millisecond before contact. And Dunn goes on to write about how the intimidation the Texans defense has created has led players going up against it to make subtle business decisions. Maybe you're going to hide behind an offensive lineman a little bit longer. Maybe you're not so excited about trying to make a catch over the middle. They put the fear of God into people. EJ Speed laid it out perfectly. He is a newcomer to this swarm defense, by the way, which in this article seems like Attila the Hun's horde, Genghis Khan's horde. They're terrifying based off of this writing and based off of what you've seen as well. At least not in week 18, maybe, but that was the backups playing. Said EJ Speed, who had a absolutely massive hit week 2 against Cameron Johnson of the Bucks Monday Night Football. How many more times do you think a guy like Rashee Rice wants to come over the middle? That's in his head. You're not going to be perfect, but if you can instill fear, it's going to give you an edge. They know, continued Speed, if they come through a hole, it's going to be trouble. It's not safe out there, especially when you're up 2 scores. People are like, man, I'm not going to put my body on the line. That's what makes a dominant defense. I think that Speed's right on that front. I think he's 100% right. Another line from Speed. We want you to hurt. We want you to remember when you played the Texans. You might have to play us again in the playoffs. You'll be like, man, last time we played these boys, I came out with an elbow, a knee, all type of stuff. More from Tyler Dunn's write-up about this Houston Texans defense. This locker room is teeming with jackals. Jackals are annoying in Halo. The fucking shields, the snipers. Self-described savages. That's what Kalen Bullock describes the Houston Texans as. That might be the new nickname for the Houston Texans defense. We'll get back to that later. One by one, continues Tyler Dunn, these jackals bring up the Legion of Boom, what the Seahawks were in the 2010s, as a North Star for what they want to be, because this is what they grew up watching. I think they're, in their own way, replicating it. Maybe not as loud as Seattle did with, of course, Richard Sherman, the ringleader of that defense. But the violence is certainly there. The Cam Chancellor kind of violence. Wish I got to cover the Seahawks. They were basically falling apart as far as who was still in the Legion of Boom by the time that I got up there. More from this article. If you didn't love Kamari Lassiter enough, you're going to love him a whole lot more coming out of this piece by Tyler Dunn at the Go Long Substack. Did you know that Kamari Lassiter leads the team in tackles? He's got 91. He's a corner. Per defensive coordinator Matt Burke, when he first met Lassiter at the NFL Combine, he could not get enough of this guy, saying about him and the first impression he got of him, this dude's freaking our type. This guy is real, a card-carrying psychopath. And he had bad 40 times at his pro day, and that made him go down a lot of draft boards, but the Texans loved him. So good thing that the Texans got him to fall into their lap, and it's probably because of the 40-yard dash, which for all those people who pay attention to the pre-draft industrial complex, yet another reason to walk away from that. Kamari Lassiter had a nickname for his tackles as far back as middle school. It was called the, quote, Kamari Crack, end quote. In the second quarter of his first game, I guess this was against Oregon, he suplexed a running back and was called for unnecessary roughness. When asked about his violent play, Lassiter said, "Football is a violent game. That was the way it was intended to be played. I grew up hitting hard and playing the game in a violent manner, doing everything to the fullest. There's going to be full-speed collisions. There are ways to hit correctly, but it was always intended to be violent." God, I love Kamari Lassiter. What a guy. This article is also going to make you feel really good about Texans defensive coordinator Matt Burke. Burke, who wants the Texans to be smart bullies, has also made the Texans believe there is no gray area, especially when it comes to quarterbacks. If a guy is running downfield, whether it's Patrick Mahomes on the sideline, Trevor Lawrence sliding, hit the guy. Hit any quarterback conducting himself as a runner. And this defense that Burke runs is very simple, which for a violent defense is perfect. Dunn wrote about the difference between a defensive coach who's got complex scheme, Rex Ryan, back in his time in Buffalo in the mid-2010s. Things were so complicated that Bills defenders were pissed about the defense they were in. I think ex-Texan Mario Williams spoke up about it. There's two types of defensive coaches in the NFL. The X and O wizard who tries to confuse the hell out of quarterbacks. And then there's the coach who prefers a room full of natural-born killers playing 100 miles per hour in a simplified defense. Burke used to be an assistant for Jim Schwartz. Jim Schwartz operated his defense a lot like what you've seen out of the Texans, specifically going back to his time with Detroit. You're going to like D'Amico Ryans a little bit more. D'Amico Ryans at the podium has definitely been frustrating for me at times. But D'Amico behind the scenes is on his players in practice. He wants his players to have their body armored for combat. If you don't finish a play, you're going to get chewed out in a team meeting, whether that's after practice, after a game. He'll replay lackadaisical reps and tell players, this is not what we're all about. If you are, that's fine, but you don't have to be here. Man, it makes you feel disappointed in yourself. You don't have to be here if you're not about this lifestyle. It doesn't matter, per Kalen Bullock, if the Texans win. This is D'Amico Ryans. They pay attention to nothing that's good in film review. They only look at the bad plays. We're trying to chase excellence. And I think this goes back to maybe Kyle Shanahan's impact on D'Amico Ryans, where D'Amico Ryans was an assistant coach. He was a linebackers coach. In film, they would do things along those lines. So I like D'Amico a little bit more coming out of it. A couple of last little tidbits from this Texans defense and the article that Tyler Dunn wrote, 2 parts for the Go Long Substack. Step 1 to becoming an all-time defense, refusing to participate in the coronation of quarterback deities. Is that how you say the word? I'm not 100% sure. They don't put any quarterback up on a pedestal. Love that. You shouldn't. If you're a defense, you should look at every single quarterback as prey, especially if you're this defense. That's what they do. Highlights for this defense this season: they sacked Josh Allen 8 times. Patrick Mahomes had a career-low 19.8 rating against him. And, of course, some of the big hits that they had, whether it was Speed's hit on the Bucks' Cam Johnson, Monday Night Football in Week 2, or the Jalen Petrie hit on Rashee Rice. Awesome write-up about the Texans defense by Tyler Dunn. Essentially, the Texans defense this season is Arnold Schwarzenegger's Conan the Barbarian.
Wrong! Conan, what is best in life? To crush your enemies, see them driven before you, and to hear the lamentation of their women.
Dude, that's the Houston Texans defense. It seems that they want to roll with this nickname going forward. Anyone see this in that article? Hear what I was saying? Kamari Lassiter referred to this defense as a bunch of savages. Actually, check that. Kalen Bullock described the Texans defense as savages. And while I do think the Swarm works, savages is pretty good. And I'm not talking savages like that movie with, I think it's Blake Lively, Aaron Taylor Johnson, and Taylor Kish, where they're like double teaming her. Interesting relationship. Lots of three ways. Good movie. A little weird. I'm talking about savages like this banger from the Disney movie. Yes, this is from a Disney movie, Pocahontas. Well, that's this random Native American guy, but you get the gist of that song, which is a banger. I say it's a banger. This is an awkward admission. When I was a little kid, I loved that song so much that sometimes I go to sleep listening to it. Does that mean that I am destined to be part of some race war down the road? I don't know. I just thought it was an awesome song, and I liked that there was a Disney movie with a little bit of violence and with guns in it for a change. Didn't really care about the Romeo and Juliet nature of the dynamic between John Smith and Pocahontas. I just loved that fucking song. I loved it. Loved it, loved it, loved it. So, if that's what the Houston Texans are going forward, if this is the nickname,
They're savages, savages, barely even human.
I can get behind that. So this might be a drop going forward.
Savages, barely even human.
I love that. So shout out to Disney for getting a song stuck in my head for all of these years. It's the Gallant Says podcast live on YouTube at Paul Gallant, on Twitch at Gallant Says, Instagram at Sports Gallant, X at Gallant Says Pod, TikTok at Gallant Says, Facebook at Paul Gallant Sports. Shout out to Mitchell Perry 4737 leading out the comments. Let's go H-Town. Texans get the win 24-17 over the Steelers. I think they could win by a little bit more against the Steelers. Life and Death of comments on Instagram at Sports Gallant. Howdy, Paul. Madden Simulation already has us winning. Where's the after party? Well, we will be live watching the game at Easy's Liquor Lounge today. Excuse me, not today. On Monday night. I'm actually going to be going there a little bit later today to do a promo of sorts there. So looking forward to that. We did a watch party for Texans Chiefs a couple of weeks ago. It was a lot of fun. So it's going to be me and Will Kunkel of Kicking It with Kunkel. What do we got on TikTok where we have again been restricted? Nothing new. Nothing new. What a surprise. Seems like my appeals of being restricted continue to fall on deaf ears. That's a bummer. Chosen 1494 says Texans, Jags, and Seahawks are the hottest teams right now. Who can stay hot? I think the Jaguars are the hottest team in the league. I know that the Texans have the longest winning streak going right now, 9 straight, tied for the longest in franchise history. But I think the Jaguars are rolling on all cylinders on both sides of the football. Their offense has looked a lot better the last couple of weeks. The Texans' offense still leaves a little bit to be desired. The Seahawks' offense also leaves a little bit to be desired. I mean, that that Seahawks offense struggled against the San Francisco 49ers defense that has a lot of issues. So I like the Seahawks. Shout out to Mike McDonald and Darnold putting together this season, but I think it's largely like the Texans about what their defense does. And you could make the same case for the Philadelphia Eagles this year too. The Eagles just have bigger names on the offensive side of things as the defending Super Bowl champions. Anyway, guys, I'm going to take off this armor. If you were watching a little bit earlier on the show, you would have seen me wearing a helmet of sorts. It's pretty awesome. Not going to lie. Hair's all over the place right now. But, I mean, look at this shit. It's all thanks to that Tyler Dunn article that he wrote. And we'll talk more about it a little bit later when we get more people in. But look at this thing. This is one of the helmets that I wore at the Ren Fest. Now, you can't really hear me if I'm talking while wearing said helmet, but, I mean, it's bitchin'. It is for sure bitchin'. Greg Todd asks if this watch party is going to be called the Gallant Says Podcast, or will it be Kicking It with Kunkel? I mean, he's going to call it Kicking It with Kunkel. I'm going to call it a Gallant Says watch party. It's going to be a joint venture, but it ought to be fun. We had a lot of fun doing it last time. Easy's is a fantastic place to watch some football, and we hope that you'll join us on a Monday night. Should be a grand old time. Now, let me make sure that I'm all clipped in. All right. Let's take a look at what's going on across the National Football League. The big news yesterday, the Baltimore Ravens got rid of head coach John Harbaugh, who won one Super Bowl back in 2012. I think it was more about Joe Flacco getting absolutely... it's hard to describe how hot he was. Sun-level hot in that playoff run. He was awesome against Denver in that double overtime classic. He did really well against New England. He played great in the Super Bowl against the 49ers. That was the peak of the John Harbaugh Ravens. That was the peak. 3 AFC title game appearances. 2011, they lose to the Patriots. Lee Evans has the drop. Billy Cundiff misses the field goal. They made it in 2008 as well, early on in the Joe Flacco era. And they last made it in 2023 with Lamar Jackson. And then Jackson played very poorly in that game, led to some changes for the Ravens on offense. I think the Ravens needed to make this move a while ago. I've never thought that highly of John Harbaugh as a head coach. You might feel otherwise, but I always thought the Ravens didn't always completely understand the sport that they played. I say that because of something that, of course, happened against the New England Patriots. Paul, you always bring it back to the New England Patriots, but my favorite memory of John Harbaugh with the Baltimore Ravens is when he cried after a 2014-15 season divisional playoff game between New England and Baltimore, where New England used the rule book to completely bamboozle Harbaugh, who lost his fucking mind about it. There's an article written about it. Seth Wickersham, NFL feature writer for ESPN, wrote this last night. Harbaugh's Ravens were one of the toughest opponents during the Patriots dynasty, until one moment when Belichick set a trap for his opponent and opposing coach. New England called the play Baltimore. The week before the playoff game, Brady and Belichick cooked up yet another iteration of what it called Raven, in which Michael Humanwanui would line up in Shane Vereen's spot as an ineligible receiver. Belichick cleared the formation with the league office and with the game officials. In a staff meeting, Belichick instructed McDaniels to not call Baltimore until the second half so that the Ravens couldn't study it at halftime. I don't want them to have time to adjust. He suspected that the play might cause Ravens head coach John Harbaugh, a great coach with a great temper, to blow a fuse during the game, revealing his worst self under Belichickian pressure. It was diabolically brilliant. This is why Belichick's the best. Brady is the main reason Belichick won so much, but Belichick's the one cooking shit up like this. Just as Belichick had predicted, Harbaugh was livid. His defense was supposed to be notified and have time to cover eligible receivers. The refs were allowing Brady to snap the ball so quickly that the Ravens couldn't adjust. Baltimore linebacker Terrell Suggs complained that the play was illegal. Trying to plead his case to the officials, Harbaugh ran onto the field and was flagged for unsportsmanlike conduct. Belichick had forced his opponent into a tailspin. The Patriots thought it was funny. During a timeout, Julian Edelman said to head referee, I think Bill Vinovich, "You guys getting your money's worth with them formations." Vinovich rolled his eyes and smiled in agreement. God damn, that's awesome. And that's how I've looked at Harbaugh ever since. Harbaugh's lucky that Lamar Jackson fell into his lap at the back of the first round during that, what was it? Was it the 2018 NFL draft? He is so fucking lucky that that happened. Because the Ravens have been all about Lamar Jackson and not John Harbaugh ever since. Harbaugh bitched and moaned about this after the game. Tom Brady had a hilarious response to it. Maybe study the rules. Harbaugh, 2 years later, was still talking about it. And right after this all went down, he cried to the NFL's competition committee to have the rules changed so that the Ravens wouldn't have to deal with this again. And the NFL, which whenever there was something that the Patriots found that they could take advantage of, constantly backpedaled and tried to accommodate the other 31 teams that weren't smart enough to think of these things. I don't really think that highly of John Harbaugh. What's the difference between John Harbaugh and Mike McCarthy? The last name? The fact that McCarthy won a Super Bowl with an elite quarterback? And it's not to say Harbaugh's a bad coach. I just think John Harbaugh was put on a pedestal that he never deserved to be on. And if you take a look at the shortcomings for the Ravens of late, sure, 2023 was a lot about Lamar Jackson, and maybe the years before in the playoffs were about Lamar Jackson, but was last year about Lamar Jackson? It just feels like the Ravens biff it in big spots under Harbaugh, and sure, mistakes happen, but is the commonality between the 2011 mistakes and the mistakes in 2024 last year, aren't the commonalities Harbaugh's existence? Doesn't feel like they dotted the I's, crossed their T's. He's the number one head coaching candidate available. I think any team that didn't fire their head coach is probably thinking maybe we should have, the New York Jets. But Harbaugh's out in Baltimore. It seems like he lost the locker room based off of some reporting that I saw. Specifically from Matt, this is from Matt King. Harbaugh wanted to run this current coaching staff back with defensive coordinator Zach Orr aboard as well. Per Rappaport, Lamar Jackson and John Harbaugh were not on the same page, and a lot of players didn't want to play. For Harbaugh, even coaches weren't in line with Harbaugh. There is an article in ESPN from a couple of days ago that highlights all the Ravens players supporting Lamar Jackson at the end of the year. Ravens fullback Patrick Ricard. I think as long as we have Lamar Jackson, this team can win a Super Bowl. Ravens tackle Roger Rosengarten. Right before we went out in the fourth quarter, Jackson said, "Let's be legendary." That's exactly what he did. He's the best in the NFL. Center Tyler Lindenbaum. He's the most electrifying player there is in the game. Lots of Ravens players spoke openly in support of him after the season was done. Questions probably being asked by Baltimore media with the mindset that there could be a shakeup at the end of the year. Either Harbaugh's gone or Jackson gets traded. And then you got this quote from Lamar Jackson afterwards. And when Jackson said this, I don't know when John Harbaugh heard about it, but I'm sure he started thinking, my days are numbered with the Ravens after 19 years.
Lamar, we're not sure when we're going to be able to talk to you next after this. This offseason, there's a lot of questions about your contract, your salary cap number. Do you feel you'll be back as the Ravens quarterback next season?
We just lost a game, a divisional game, a game to put us in the playoffs. I'm not even thinking about that right now, to be honest with you. I'm still caught up in what just happened, That's not my focus right now.
Lamar, there's a lot of questions about Harbaugh's future as well. Do you want to see John remain the coach for next year?
You asked me about next year, Jameson. Like, I'm so caught up in what just happened tonight. I can't focus on that right now. I just told you. Like, he asked me, "Are you stunned?" I'm stunned right now. I'm still trying to process what's going on. Like, I know we lost, but what the
It's a good cop-out, but you can slide an endorsement in there if you want him back, and you never got it from him there. Never got it from him there. So Lamar Jackson stays in Baltimore. John Harbaugh, who wanted to roll back with the exact same coaching staff after what a disastrous start the Ravens had to the season. Sure, there were injuries, is out. He wanted to keep Todd Monken, their offensive coordinator, and we will see what the Ravens do next. The most interesting name I have seen floated is that of Cliff Kingsbury. What's that going to do? What's that going to do? Amid recent league-wide buzz about Cliff Kingsbury's future, many believe Baltimore, paired with Lamar Jackson, would be an ideal landing spot for the now former Commanders offensive coordinator, because Cliff Kingsbury walked away from Washington. Yeah, we'll see how that goes. Are the Ravens better off with John Harbaugh gone? That obviously remains to be seen, but it was about time. I think that he's been put on a pedestal that he didn't deserve to be on. And I have no sympathy for a coach who gets canned after nearly 2 decades on the job, given how difficult it is to get that opportunity. And I'd say the same thing about some of these long-time shows that are going off the air, too. I mean, I would kill for more than 2 years with a show. I've never had more than 2 years straight with the same exact show. There's constantly shakeups and changes and stuff. And makes me frustrated with myself that I didn't just do this for a lot of my career. Harbaugh gets 2 decades, and all he's got to show for it is 1 Super Bowl victory, and that's it. And hey, you respect that Baltimore's patient, and you also realize that it's going to be tough for Baltimore to get a better coach than John Harbaugh, who I do believe is a good coach. But is he one of the best in the game? Probably not. Let's keep rolling, talking some National Football League. The Indianapolis Colts are sticking with Shane Steichen despite the start that they had to the year. What were the Colts at one point? I think Indianapolis was 8-2, and then they lost their last 7 games. I told you they could lose their last 7 games after that 8-2 start. Daniel Jones getting injured obviously made that a little bit easier as far as being able to happen. But they are sticking with their general manager as well. I don't think Steichen deserves blame for the season falling apart necessarily, but to stick with general manager Chris Ballard when you haven't won the division in 9 years, that is surprising. Carly Jean Irsay, who now runs the Colts, the one that went viral for being on the sideline, who got a lot of credit for the Colts' great start being on the sideline, is now tasked with overseeing whatever happens next. She made no changes and released about a 3-minute opening statement at a press conference to announce that they are sticking with the status quo yesterday. Here is what Carly Jean Irsay had to say. Actually, I guess this was on Monday. Here is what she had to say Monday afternoon about the future of Indianapolis.
We have been very clear with Chris and Shane that giving them another opportunity means that the sense of urgency for them to deliver and perform has never been higher. Chris and Shane are both capable of facing this challenge head on and finding a way to achieve the results that our fans deserve.
If you're watching along on YouTube, Twitch, Instagram, Facebook, X, TikTok, just take a look at Carly Jean Irsay one more time. That is stolen eyebrow valor. That is stolen eyebrow valor. Those fuckers are painted on. I don't like that. My girlfriend likes this woman. She loves Carly Jean Irsay. I think Irsay got way too much credit for the beginning of the year. They lost 7 straight. Whatever. I love my girlfriend. They're going to keep rolling with Chris Ballard as general manager. Good luck with that. I mean, they really pushed their chips into the middle of the table based off of Daniel Jones, and now he's coming off an Achilles injury when his athleticism is probably the biggest part of his game. What else is going on around the NFL as we take a look at coaching searches? Did anyone see that the Tennessee Titans are once again interviewing everybody, and there's a lot of just lame, boring candidates on their list? They can't get a John Harbaugh. They can't. They can't get a Kevin Stefanski. No one wants to go there with what happened to Mike Vrabel. Everyone thinks the Titans are crazy for moving on from Mike Vrabel. Look what he did with the Patriots this past season. But one of the guys that the Titans are eyeing is former Cowboys head coach and current NBC analyst Jason Garrett. We need this to happen. Jason Garrett as the Titans head coach. We need this to happen. 1, so we don't see him on NBC anymore. 2, because this is the perfect boring hire that someone like Amy Adams Strunk, owner of the Titans, would consider sexy. This is the sexiest the Titans can get with her running the show. Good luck. Garrett wasn't bad with Dallas for what it's worth. Just wasn't good, and Cowboys fans got sick of how long he was there. More coaching tidbits per... Who reported this? But per a report from ESPN, Tom Brady is looking at former Miami Dolphins head coach and current Vikings defensive coordinator Brian Flores to be the Raiders' next head coach. This is interesting because Flores is the subject of an NFL lawsuit that features the Houston Texans, among other teams. I love this, that Tom Brady is continuing the Raiders' way of doing things that pisses off the rest of the National Football League, because Brady's the one that is seemingly running the show here. Didn't go so well year one with Pete Carroll and Chip Kelly, a forced marriage that Pete Carroll never seemed to want. Will Brian Flores get more out of the Raiders? I don't know. That team will certainly have a hard ass as a head coach. Will being a hard ass work with the Raiders if you do not have the quarterback? And I don't really see the avenue for the Raiders to get that next quarterback. But Brian Flores could be the next head coach of the Raiders. Meanwhile, Matt Ryan, and while we're talking about Tom Brady, is expected to be hired as the president of Falcons football operations. He also wants to retain his duties with CBS. Are people going to cry about this in the same way they cried about Tom Brady? They should, if they're consistent. They won't, because people have Tom Brady derangement syndrome. The Cowboys fired their defensive coordinator, Matt Eberflus, and what's awesome is that you could see how players feel about this, even if they don't publicly weigh in on it. And the fact that George Pickens liked it sort of goes to show you that the Cowboys offense was super pissed about what the defense did this year. I think Dak Prescott even said at the end of the year, this is one of the first seasons I realized I don't have that much of an impact on what goes down. More coaching talk. Christopher Corey asked, how many Super Bowls did Mike Tomlin have? And Alex Poulain answered on the Twitch, 1. Similar stats to Harbaugh. Right. I mean, Tomlin could have been gone after losing Sunday night as well. And if you're the Texans, you got to be feeling really good with this defense going up against Aaron Rodgers and Pittsburgh. I think later on this week, we're going to do a deep dive into who the Houston Texans are most similar to as far as the barbarians and killers of history. But go back and watch the earlier part of this show if you haven't already to see some incredible Houston Texans defense porn. What do we got on TikTok? I forgot. We're still restricted. FNA. Let's do a little politics. They're fucking terrible politics. Nobody likes them. They are the worst thing that's ever happened to the world. Well, I don't know if it's the worst thing that ever happened to the world. There's a little thing called Hitler, Genghis Khan, Attila the Hun. That dude who was running Belgium back in the day. Was it like King Leopold or something like that? Like there's been some bad dudes. Yesterday was January 6th, in case you didn't know. And the left never wants you to move on. I know there's a variety of different opinions on what happened on January 6th. I think it was an embarrassing moment for our country. I also think at the same time that the left continuously bringing up January 6th as if it's September 11th or Pearl Harbor, it's gotten old. You can acknowledge what happened there was bad. You can try to put in safeguards to stop it from happening again, but I don't know that there's enough evidence to link January 6th to the actual president of the United States trying to enact a coup. If there was an actual coup, the military would have been involved. I took a political science class in college about what a coup actually is. This seemed to be a bunch of drunk people stumbling into open doors. I don't know all the specifics of what went down there. I know a lot of people have conspiracy theories and tinfoil hats. January 6th was bad. Was it the worst thing ever? I don't know. But the left keeps on bringing this up, and I just don't think it's helping them get people that are in the middle or maybe people that lean right that are annoyed with the current administration. I don't think it's getting them back on their side, but I mean, they constantly are playing this up. Here is a candlelight vigil that they had yesterday. I mean, where was this with the fires in Hawaii? Where was this for some of the other awful moments that have happened in our country? Nope. January 6th, though. Speaking of January 6th, Tim Walz talked about that yesterday, unprompted. He had a press conference to announce that he was stepping away from running for re-election as governor of Minnesota. Oh, I wonder why. Might have to do with all the fraud taking place. Somehow he was still popular in the wake of failing completely to put a lid on all of the anarchy that happened after the George Floyd protests. But that's neither here nor there. Some are wondering if there is more that could potentially be coming out about Tim Walz in the near future. But he put together, I think it was a 7-minute statement announcing that he was stepping down after making that post on X that we read yesterday. And said statement wrapped up rather awkwardly. In case you didn't see it, after dropping out of the race, he didn't really explain or answer any questions. And I think he thought he was going to get away with not answering or addressing any questions.
Fraudsters, certainly not this president, not on my watch. Tomorrow, I'll be back with you. I'll give you an update on America's best paid family medical leave program that is now a week into it. And at that time, I'll take all your questions. Thank you all.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
I mean, he's from re-election, and he doesn't even answer any questions. That's crazy to me. But he did eventually talk about stepping away. And he's really trying to focus on anything but the fact that he is stepping away from running for re-election in the wake of a fraud scandal that is making a lot of people do some digging about daycare fraud across the United States. I'm looking to do some myself, specifically here in Houston. He gets pretty testy here. Look at this. Look at Governor Tim Walz here, getting testy with people asking about, well, yo, what's going on, bro?
Their idea of improving this state is being a parrot for Donald Trump, agreeing to everything that he agreed with. Well, here's what I'm going to tell you. It ain't happening. I'm not going anywhere. And you can make all your requests for me to resign over my dead body. Will that happen? I will fight this thing till the very end to make this state better. And the question that I think they need to decide is when did the guy in the White House resign? When does he take accountability for what he did? Because it isn't going to happen here in terms of us shying away from making.
It has nothing to do with what's going on your watch. When's the president going to resign? People want me to resign. I'm not resigning. When's the president going to resign? Okay, but you're not running for re-election. Isn't that, in a way, resigning? Especially when somehow, some way, you're the projected favorite to continue as governor, even with all the shit that's going down? Wild. Oh, what about the president? What about the president? What about, this is an even better pivot, what about January 6th, guys? Come on. It's January 6th. What are we doing here? What are we doing? It's me, Tim Walz.
Governor, what decision to end your campaign by yourself, or did you receive pressure from Democratic allies?
This is a decision that I make and make with my family. And certainly, I think, as I said, it's the right decision. I'll note, I think it's appropriate we're here today. The war that's being waged against Minnesota, you're seeing it. We have a ridiculous surge of apparently 2,000 people not coordinating with us that are for a show of the cameras. I'm going to note to all of you, today is January 6th. There's no debate what happened. The President of the United States led an insurrection against a fair election to try and overturn that and, report both sides of this. Well, he said he really didn't, and courts convicted 400 of them, and he pardoned them. No, he did that. He did that, and that's today. And it's clear that we also saw today he implemented 5 states are being punished with a freezing of federal funds illegally that were appropriate.
We're here for you. We're here for you. Listen, this shouldn't even be a political issue. He's a fucking terrible governor. He's awful. Fraud happened on his watch. Anarchy happened on his watch. Left and right, let's agree on that. Push this guy to the side. He's not running for re-election. He's very defiant when asked about not running for re-election. He's bringing up January 6th. He's asking about, why hasn't the president stepped down? Dog, we're here for you. We're asking you questions. We're asking if you were pressured to step down by people in your own party. I imagine he was. Oh, look at this, look at that. The redirects. And every politician does this, left or right. It's the way of America. Anyway, Christopher Corey 2317 says, "Oh yay, political opinions. Yeah, this is the politics segment of the show. If you want the sports side of it, you got to come at 7:00, bro." More from the world of politics. And I guess this is actually just fun times in Houston. Maybe we start with the fun times in Houston first before we end with politics next time around. But look at this. Chris, stop bitching. Go back to earlier in the show. We talked about it. I talked about it for 40 minutes. This is the Gallant Says podcast, bro. How about this story? Woman accused of burning boyfriend's clothes in barbecue pit, which started apartment fire. According to the Harris County Fire Marshal's Office, 13 units were burned in the fire. A woman accused of setting her entire apartment building on fire is in custody after an argument with her boyfriend. Cell phone video shared with Channel 11 shows fire shooting through the top of a building. Fire officials say it started when the suspect put her boyfriend's clothes inside of a barbecue pit on the patio and set them on fire. The fire marshal's office said the suspect thought she'd extinguished the fire, but it later rekindled, got inside of a crawl space, and allowed the fire to spread through the building. At one point, fire officials say a second-story unit collapsed into the first floor. 13 units burned, 17 families forced out. Ladies, you gotta calm down. The dramatic gesture when you're mad at your man. Hopefully I never deal with this with my girlfriend who I love. Burning clothes with a fire pit on your patio. What are you thinking? I got a patio here at my place. You can't, in most apartment complexes in Houston, you can't put patios that have a cover. You can't cook on it. What are you fucking doing? Gotta be dramatic. I'm gonna burn all his clothes. I'm gonna burn on his clothes. Oh, well, good job. You just burned down a bunch of people's homes, you selfish bitch. Ugh. More fun in Houston. Anyone see this? Hear about this? There was a military truck without license plates driving around Houston. This video from Channel 2 and Gage Galding. Look at this thing. Guy's going Grand Theft Auto, real life. A military-style truck with no license plates led deputies on a more than hour-long chase across Harris County in Houston after investigators say it hit at least 10 vehicles and tried to ram law enforcement. The pursuit ended on the East Tex freeway after SWAT deployed gas and the driver surrendered. He's now facing multiple felony charges. God damn, dog. That's got to be terrifying. A military semi driving around, just trucks sticking, literally. People left and right, right and left. Hopefully no one was injured in that. Let's keep talking about Houston. Anyone see this clip with this dork? And I feel very comfortable saying dork. Look at this guy's fucking glasses. Look at this shit. This guy is at Briefing Attorney on Instagram talking about Houston versus Dallas with the subject, people don't actually want to move to Houston. He spelled it wrong.
He lives in Houston because they like it. Anybody who lives in Houston has to live in Houston. It's either because you're chained to family, or you're chained to the energy industry, or you're chained to some other type of debt or obligation or probation or crime or something like that. So I can understand why folks from Houston want to come to Dallas as often as possible, or look, even Austin. Austin is nice. But yeah, I've yet to meet anybody in Houston that's not there because they're not forced to be there. Nobody lives.
Look at your fucking glasses, dude. You look like a fucking dork. I'm wondering if they're even real. These are the kind of glasses that you wear as a statement. Do you think these are prescription? No, this guy's just a cunt. Look at his eyes. You look like an asshole like that. You think that's stylish? It doesn't even match your fucking shirt. Where's the red? You're wearing red glasses. You got a blue jacket on. Fashionista Paul here. What the fuck is this? Paul, you're wearing a baseball hat and a t-shirt. Yeah, it's fucking 8 in the morning. I haven't showered yet. I haven't put my hair up. This guy's an asshole. Oh, people want to live in Houston because of this. Listen, I like Houston a lot. It's the most welcoming place I've ever lived. Grew up in Boston, lived in Seattle. I do like Tampa Bay a lot. Tampa Bay's beautiful, but it's got its own limitations. I love it here. Got a fantastic group of friends here that I would not have probably anywhere else. And I still get to act like I'm not my own age at the age of 36. It's great. Great food, great drinks, great people. I'm glad to be here. Wish it was a little bit more of a diehard sports town, but guess what? Since it's not a diehard sports town and people like hearing me talk, I get to talk about other things. Cooper says Dallas is worse. Austin used to be cool. Been a while since I've been to Dallas. Does seem like there's a lot of pretentiousness there. It is weird that Dallas views itself as a Los Angeles of sorts when it's in fucking Dust Bowl of Oklahoma, right? It's kind of in the middle of nowhere, not exactly the prettiest place. Austin, the area around it, actually is pretty beautiful. It's lost its mind a little bit on the politics side of things. It's also gotten a little bit overcrowded for sure. But I don't think I'd mind living in Austin. Dallas, listen, if a job was presented to me up there, especially working for the guy who originally hired me, hell to the yeah. But I don't really want to drive 4 hours up the road. If there was like some sort of high-speed rail that went up there, I'd probably go up there. But driving 4 hours up there, not so much. Greg Todd asked about the Cougs Texas Tech game last night. I did have it on. The girlfriend was over. We were watching a couple of TV shows, and I was doing a little bit of work around the house. So I did not really catch much of it. I was very excited to see Syracuse win their game last night. Pretty crazy. You go to the college basketball side of ESPN, it doesn't even show who won the game. But the Cougs won 69-65. My biggest takeaway from the game was there were a couple of moments where I saw the people were wearing like Coug rings so that they could do the Shastas, and I want one. If anyone has one, I want one. Anyone out there, please let me know. So there you go, guys. That's going to wrap up today's edition of the Gallant Says podcast. We do this thing weekdays at 7 a.m. Central Time. We generally start off by talking about Houston sports. We drift into football, the NFL, and then we do a little politics, Houston talk, et cetera, et cetera. Trying to get a better organization for the show, but I hope you enjoyed today's show. The Texans defense going forward. Savages. Do we like the nickname? Sound off in the comments. If you haven't already, please like this video and subscribe to my channel on YouTube at Paul Gallant. It's where we get paid the most. I'm also on Twitch. Give me a follow, but I'd appreciate a sub at Gallant Says. We are on Instagram and TikTok. We post clips of the show there. Also on X. TikTok, it's at Gallant Says. Instagram, it's at Sports Gallant. X, it's at Gallant Says Pod. Also on Facebook at Paul Gallant Sports. That page has slowly been growing. Trying to be a little more active on that. We've also got a podcast that you can hear clips from this show after the fact. We're going to change things in the near future, but we're just going to post segments from it from now. Subscribe, rate, and review the Gallant Says podcast, Apple Podcasts, and on Spotify. Every little bit of support means a whole lot. Thanks so much for tuning in. Until tomorrow at 7 a.m., so long, farewell.
Farewell and adieu to you fair Spanish ladies. Farewell and adieu, you ladies of Spain.